Gigi Berardi reading the second page of Labor, Considerations in Our Shared World of Food and Farming. Another aspect of labor is more clear-cut. What are the terms of work, namely wages, other forms of compensation, and working and living conditions? An equitable food system following the FoodWISE approach requires that these terms be fair to the workers. Labor costs can be a big part of farm or processor expenses, and, as with most businesses, finding mutually acceptable terms of employment affecting wages and revenues can be difficult. Yet, sustainability requires knowledgeable, capable, and maybe long-term workers. So that balance has to be found. The same issues apply to food businesses on up the chain, perhaps most strikingly at the retail level, where efficiencies drive practices that don't fit our FoodWISE standards. At the US and world's top grocery chain retailer, Walmart, I don't care if the cereal costs $2 if the person at the checkout counter is not making a living wage, because that person and that person's wages are also part of the agricultural web. Resilience in agriculture necessarily includes a sustainable supply of labor, which basically translates into well enough paid, well enough compensated. Right now, a willing labor force exists, but that force is under threat. Any deportation policies targeting agricultural workers would greatly affect the agricultural web, particularly in places like my home state of Washington, which is a major fruit grower and thus heavily dependent on foreign-born labor. Analysts, even conservative ones at the Washington Policy Center, are looking at what's happening with labor policy as it becomes increasingly clear that, without migrant labor, we won't have farms. For several decades, Philip L. Martin of the University of California has written on progressive immigration reform to ensure that we still have people to work our farms. This means facilitating a path for authorized and unauthorized migrant workers to become U.S. residents, and a shift from current practices that force farmers to rely on thousands of unauthorized, foreign-born workers who are increasingly at risk of deportation if they make it into the United States at all. Further, with unauthorized status comes substantial risk and uncertainty in the lives of the workers, with no social security benefits, no guarantees of education, and no legal resources available. These workers live on the edge in a way few native-born U.S. citizens can imagine. The seasonal nature of agricultural labor only increases that uncertainty. That uncertainty is even greater now. And I look also at Mexico, where I work in the state of Guanajuato in the summer, and I take students to look at the export agriculture in that particular state for broccoli. And in terms of resources, natural resources, but also human labor resources, it doesn't look very food-wise. But that's another story.